Texas League of Women Voters is organized to encourage women to exercise the right to vote. And then as far as being involved in politics, that took another long time to make that happen. So I'm just going to go through a couple of quick things about individuals in Abilene who were members of many different clubs who did some things that are still going on today. Mrs. J.D. Sanderford, we know her name was Lucille Gilbert. She was the wife of the president of Simmons College. And she had studied in Chicago Art Institute. She had been the director of Ruskin College, part of, in 1909, the art director. Most of the time you can get an academic degree in art. She traveled to she went to Manila, she went to the Philippines, she went to Japan, she went to China. I bet every woman's club wanted her to talk.
Oh, yeah.
Right, okay. Probably with her husband, but she went. 1922, she was a teacher at Simmons College, and she painted the River Jordan in the baptistry of the First Baptist Church. I don't know what happened to that. I'd love to see that. But she was a member of the Art Forum, she was a member of the Women's Forum, and she won prizes at the West Texas State. But if her husband had not been president of the university, I doubt that they would have let her teach art classes. And many of the art departments started with let the women teach a class. No one will come, and they did, and it surprised everybody. But they were segregated classes. There were only women in the classes, and eventually, here you see the Chautauqua Arts Building in 1922. That's a commitment to the art there. Abilene Christian, we have Mrs. J.P. Sewell. She's the wife of the president, and she also has an interesting history in the arts. And through her encouragement there, they established art programs and had art clubs, things like that on campus. Miss Claire Tate, this is one of those Miss names, always the spinster, but I can read the list of things that really surprise you. She gave this wonderful painting to the museum. This is how a lot of our museums actually came. Our collection started by people who gave things to the museum very early on. She was an Abilene native. She studied at the Kansas Fine Art Institute. She was an art instructor at Abilene Christian College, Lord Art Academy College Springs. She studied in Woodstock, New York. She studied Art Students League in New York. She came to Abilene and she was elected to be an art instructor at Abilene Christian. She was involved with Cristobal, which is a San Angelo camp in the 1920s. Really interesting group of people that met there. Probably a little kind of bohemian, I guess, for the day. But she helped establish the university art departments, is the point I want to make. And this is music, and this is drama, and this is other things other than visual. And she eventually became head of the McMurray Art Department. And she was a member of the art department, the Women's Forum, so she was getting all of those people involved in this. She was the director of, like I said, and McMurray, and I'm going to show you a couple of others. These are individual stories. Lois Hope Shaw, art department at McMurray. She was an instructor there. I actually saw some of these pieces from her family. She studied with William and Chase in New York. So they're not just people that are showing up and doing anything very interesting people. So if you look at the 1920s, these girls don't look the least bit happy. They should be. Post-war, Texas experienced a boom, and women's clubs grew in scope and purpose as auxiliaries for businesses. And women were working some, and so we have Public Information Committee of the West Texas Utility Company. That was a women's club. Jazz, West Texas, first coming through the film, so people exposed to that. New Style. In fact, there was a law in Abilene against vamping. Vamping. Does anybody know what vamping is? Flirting. Women making eye contact. The problem was, this is in 1921. It was on the books. 1921, women quit wearing corsets. The younger girls were wearing, actually no undergarments, and they were wearing these clinging 20s style clothes, and they had their arms exposed. I'm sure the moms were still wearing the corsets. But the girls they were walking down the street in the alley and making eye contact, flirting with men. They could be arrested for vamping. So, watch yourself. It may still be on the books. Dancing, drinking, public concerns, lots of censorship, lots of rules about that. A small group of women headed by the mayor's wife, Mrs. Dallas Carver, responded by organizing democratic clubs and different departments, wishing, trying to get these girls off the street and get young girls involved in serious study, like the rest of the older people. I mean, how successful all of that was. But the Abilene Women's Club was chartered in 1929. They originally met in the Crystal Ballroom in the Chelsea Hotel. They shared the purpose to promote cultural and civic advancement in Abilene, Texas, through the study of literature, history, science, painting, music, and the other fine art. Pretty ambitious schedule. The organization continues today to do some of those things. It's certainly changed over the years. A lot of young women today don't feel like they have time to come and have lunch. But the whole format of most women's clubs, and a lot of men's clubs, is, the president introduces, then you have a speaker. And the whole point of that is not to put you to sleep like I'm about to do, but is to teach somebody, share an experience. So it's supposed to be an enlightening thing, something that you didn't know before. That's where all of that comes from. There are a lot of different projects I can go on and on about what these women accomplished in the 20s. To make it local, we'll talk about Frances Batille Fisk. She is the author of the first book on Texas art. And I looked at this book. Then in 1928, we had Dr. Light Cummings come from Austin College, so he's writing a paper on her. I don't know when a woman ever slept. She created this book. So how did she know what's going on? This is a primary resource for study of Texas art. It's out of print, but I think there's a copy in the library. I have some copies of it. She labeled Abilene the Athens of West Texas. Of course, she was really proud of us out here on the prairie. And we had more art teachers in the studios and things like that than anybody did, according to her. She got this information because she got it through the state network of the art unit of the Women's Forum. She sent them all the letters and notes, and she said, what is happening in art in your community? Of course, the art forum was in tune, so they said who's doing what, who's painting what, who they had as guest lecturers, they had bios of everybody. So it takes little sections of the state. I mean, it's amazing. What is in it in the detail? Because every one of her friends in this organization submitted it. She put it together. Her husband at one time worked for the Reporter News, and I think through him, I think after he was deceased, it was self-published. But it became the most important work on early Texas art and what was happening in the state. She was in every club you could name, and this is really a fascinating individual. If you want to read more about her, I'm really anticipating Dr. Cummings' essay about her. He's a consummate researcher. Anyway, a lot of people are interested in this now. So we get into the 30s. Who's the lady in the top right corner? She is the model for women's activism in the 30s, right? She came to Abilene. She went to every little town, and there are several clubs called Eleanor Roosevelt Club. So they modeled her ideas, and what was she trying to do? It was the New Deal. Disadvantaged people that didn't have things, how to be active in your community to help people rise above the poverty level, and certainly break rules about segregation. Really interesting. She taught American women how the value of women working to meet the essential needs of their community. So it may not be lofty fine arts, but that's where they got very, very active in it. So the club started to study economics, history, government, and rural areas, women's hygiene, children's health, and they went out in groves and made a big difference. They wore their uniforms and took their portfolios and got the word out and helped people in ways that's hard to imagine. And my grandmother was a part of that, and you know she did that. She got her certificate, I got her little nurse certificate. They didn't call them nurses in those days. But anyway, she really, and this is also the time that we established the Art Museum for Abilene, 1937. A group of women in the art farm said, we need to have a museum. Fort Worth has a museum, Dallas has a museum. They didn't have a building, they had no money. But they chartered it, and they put a man in charge, and then made it all work. And that was kind of a typical thing. I don't disparage the individual, don't get me wrong. But it's just kind of if you look at that, that's the way it works. So they convinced the mayor to let them have a corner in the hallway of the West Texas Chamber of Commerce downtown, and so they could hang art for a while. They met, you could come on like Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, and they had tea. But they went to the Museum of Modern Art. They went to the Metropolitan. And they wrote letters and said, we don't have much money, but we really want to do this. And they got the amazing exhibit. Artists from all over the United States came. And these artists were also going to all other small communities. But the story of what the ladies that you see here, see the two things on the wall right there? Some of the first things in the collection, Thomas Hart Benton and Friends, they have $5 a piece on the back. We still have those in the collection. So they were really proud. I'm kind of high, but anyway. They started the Sunshine Nursery, which is a Negro daycare center. So how did they do those kind of things? That was something a hot potato politically for men to do. But the women got busy and made it happen. Civic issues of all kinds. Creative Arts Club was a part of New Emphasis. It was called Creative Sketch Club in the beginning. The Poetry Society, very complex. You had to write your own poems. Not only recite someone else's, you write your own poems and present them. The Avenue Garden Club, and we all know the competition that went on in the garden club in everybody's front yard, and what kind of irises you were able to bring to bloom and share with everyone else. So that became another issue. So this is one of the cover things of the Fine Arts Museum, and that is actually the West Texas Chamber of Commerce. And we have those paintings. Really interesting and how ambitious they were for the artists in our community. So the unwavering volunteer spirit and their level of achievement and ability to meet the needs of the community, the grassroots level, is exhibited by all of these organizations across the board. And it's an overlay chapter in Alabama history. This shows you some of the people who actually, I don't know if you can read the names, but that's how many people it took to buy a painting. And the way they did that, when you would come in, they had a little mimeograph sheet, remember that purple stuff in the mimeograph? And you could come in and vote. You had to pay something, 50 cents or $1. But you had to pick which one you liked best, circle it, and you had to include your name and telephone number. You couldn't do it anonymously. But they took a poll of what they thought their idea was art for the good of the citizens of Abilene. So citizens of Abilene were involved, and they were able to buy some important works of art. They're probably some of the stars in our collection today. And it's interesting, the first piece that they bought was by a woman who used two initials for her first name. Hall was her name. She was from Missouri, and she was in this national exhibit of portraiture. And they brought it to Abilene. So here are a few other women who studied abroad, different things. Here we have, I don't know if all of you know Maxine Perini. We have this work by her. She studied at the Chicago Art Institute, and her grandmother was from Abilene, so she came to Abilene, and after she graduated, her grandmother said, why don't you have, one hotel said, we'll have an art show of your work. So she came to town, and she met Vincent Perini, and they married shortly thereafter. So here she comes. She'd been to Abilene previously, but this little painting that we have, there's several versions of this, we have a lot of color, that's her envisioning her life to come. So this is in about 1930. She's painting the Cowboy Christmas Ball. And you see old people, young people, wonderful round people. And it's a lovely piece. But she was a mover and shaker. And the thing about her to remember is not only, let's see, I have I'm almost through here. She has a BFA from the Art Institute of Chicago in 1935. She exhibited in Chicago in 36, 37, and 40. She moved to Abilene in 36 and married a man, V.C. Green Jr. She was a founding member of the art form in 1937. She headed 2 capital campaigns for the museum. She helped establish Rose Park in 1963. She chaired the Taylor County Historical Commission for quite some time, which is she was given a Pathfinder Award. She had many charitable institutions. She resigned from the board of the museum over a new painting of by Thomas Hart Benton that was not allowed to be shown, but eventually she got over it. She came back. But she was all about bringing the best.
Never got it.
Yeah, but we didn't talk, not thinking about talking about it. Never that. Yeah, we have a problem with paintings like that to this day. We work with it. So what's happening in the 40s? Think of Camp Barclay. Yes, here's Rosie the Riveter. The recovery after World War II, many women's clubs gained a lot of members at this particular time in the fort. Big, many different purposes. I love the photos of the women with the cakes. This is like a cakewalk. So bringing food, doing what they did best. They studied, book review clubs were added, and they added junior matrons and senior matrons and different, to accommodate everybody. Patriotic mission. The painting behind here dated very much, Samuel Smith was at Camp Barclay, and they had to show up his work in their makeshift museum because they wanted to support the war effort. Red Cross, Camp Barclay Hospital, those volunteers were called Gray Ladies. McMurray Maidens were all-girl orchestra. You have any information on that? I think we need a picture of that. They would perform at the USA. Wow, yeah. And there was also the dancers. If you couldn't play an instrument, you could dance and be part of the women. It would dance with the guys in the USA. So, new generation of women's service. This is when the junior leagues comes about. The goal of spearheading and planning effective volunteer service across the broad section of the community and making it socially acceptable was a very much a part of that. Miss Ann Carpenter, another one of our spinsters who did amazing things, a long list of what she accomplished. She was a national chair in Abilene for about 10 years. We had national chair, state chairman who went to national. One award, they gave them paintings. They're now in the museum collection. So that's a great story. And she was a spinster who has amazing history. She was art instructor at Hardin Simmons, and very interesting individual. So, 1950s, 1953, the American Federation of Women's Clubs numbered 34 clubs. And about this time, and there are a lot of clubs that aren't federated. We had more clubs, women's only clubs in Abilene in 1950 than Houston. So it's kind of like nonprofits. Think about how many nonprofits are more than the normal number. Yeah. So this tradition goes back to this. By 1950, women made up 30% of the workforce, about 26%, and we had the Abilene Secretary team, and different women's clubs that are dependent on what they did, their job. And the Newcomers Club, as new people came to town, there on the front porch with a basket of goodies and welcome to Abilene. All kinds of volunteer service all across the board. I want to make a point that I think we could say some of these women that we talked about were professional volunteers. They were president of so many clubs. Here we have Mrs. Morgan Jones. She was volunteer chair of the museum for 20 years. 20 years work. Now we have, like a CEO. And the level of organization and expertise and how they can organize people, how they can get things done, it is truly extraordinary. So those strict Robert Rules of Order, tea, things like that, is not all the story. It's not just a few women getting together and your grandma going off to do something in a fancy hat. So people like Mrs. Morgan Jones and many other women, this is when they dedicated the museum, 1957. So for 30 years they didn't have a building. They managed to make it work, and finally they had a building. So my question for us today is, where's the next generation of volunteers coming from?
Good question.
Excellent question. Everybody, I think it's a big topic for nonprofits because maybe people don't have the extra time, the free time. I see a lot of people want to volunteer. We love the planet, we love penguins, we love things like that. But to really get in their own communities and volunteer their time and what they're good at, I think that's the big challenge now. And it may not be through a single sex group, but I think it's something, I know on college campuses, a volunteer program, they go on summer camps, they learn how to do that. I think it's our responsibility to help welcome those people and to train the next generation. To talk to them about it and share stories like this and share our own enthusiasm for it and what we gained from it. And maybe we can inspire this to continue. And it may take a completely different form. But the community needs this. And women are a major part of that. We need to remember what these clubs accomplished. We need to remember, we may not remember the names, we may remember the name of the clubs or all the days, But this is to be a source of civic pride. And we should be very proud of this. And these groups, some people think they're old-fashioned. They think they are very much not about, they're more social than they are serving the need of the community. We do need to acknowledge their contributions and the circumstances and the cultures in which they live. And we're all grown in today's culture. And we have ideas about what we think we're supposed to be doing to our families and our children. I'm sure I have a lot of ideas. But the bottom line is we all have that moral responsibility to one another. And we all have to work within the culture, whether it's Avenue, which is considered very conservative, or whether you're my son lives, two of my children in California, it's a very different atmosphere. So I think we all need to find a way to do it. Would you agree?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll take questions if anybody has any questions.
Where was this building?
The what?
Where is this building?
This is the 726 Cedar Street.
That's across from where the Civic Center is now.
And there were a couple of different buildings. And then, of course, the one at Rose Park, it has red came in the front, you showed about it the other day. But they outgrew every one. And of course, when they repurposed the old Grace Hotel, they said, oh my gosh, we've got 55,000 square feet. It was a museum in town there. So that's kind of how, and the Junior League started the history collection in the 70s. They had, I think they took it on as a project to have a history museum. And so they did an advertisement in the Reporter News, everybody could bring their heirlooms. They didn't know what to do with them when they got them. There were so many. And so part of the problem that I'm working with the museum is, what are these things, who brought them, who do they belong to? So if I have a handkerchief with no information, some of those things were mass produced. So it's the story, who owned it, that make the difference. So we have to have a very specific policy. Somebody told me the other day wanted to donate a microwave. Well, that's not exactly what we do. So the good thing is I have a policy, and I'm sure Heather's nodding over here. The Buffalo Gap Historic Village has the same kind of thing. But they're in the same business that we're in, the history aspect, is gathering stories, doing research, and presenting exhibits, giving talks. And we do want to eventually have archives available digitally for people to do research. Because I'm sure it happens to you. People say, I want to find out about Camp Berkeley, or I want to find out about something that happened in Buffalo. Well, this stuff is all over. And it's still in some people's garages. It's still out there. So it's a process. It's getting those names and places together. And like I said before, somebody will tell you something, and it's their family legend. Not really based on fact. So sometimes, grandma did something and that's not really what she did. But, and we have to honor all of those things. There's the legends and stories and all of those things put together. But it creates a great sense of community, a great sense of heritage that we're all part of. I mean, I'm a transplant. A lot of other people here are transplants of the area. And I think any place that you go, you're going to find similar stories. I've given this talk in several different places. I've tailored this one to us. But everybody comes up, oh, here, my mother did this, or my grandmother did it, I have this, or I have that. And then they become inspired to keep those records. But we know the federated organized clubs has scrapbook. I don't know if you ever get your picture in the newspaper today. I bet some person in the family sends you a copy of that article. Right? Right? Now, maybe they don't do it. Young people don't do it. But it's that idea. You got to keep that together. You got to paste it in the scrapbook. And so I have a lot of those scrapbooks, and I know they have a bunch of Hardy Simmons and all, and have mold in them. So they have problems with keeping them. But if we can digitize them, we don't have to touch it. And then the stories become available, and we can organize them in an official archive. So you can go online and type in, 1957 Art Museum, Abilene, Texas, and all kinds of information will come up. Hopefully pictures will come up. And I think that's probably one of the easiest and best ways for the younger generation to get their hands on this information. I think it's really interesting, but I'm aware of a lot of things that I find interesting. Everybody else does.
So, Judy, when you were doing this research, did extension homemakers come into play with some sort of
I don't have
contribution?
information on that, but I know that they were out there. You know, a lot of those groups, I guess, still have, I mean, I've talked to Tipsy about the creative sketch club.
No,
Yeah, well, yes, the both of you have talked,
Yes, yes.
but she's kept, that you have all the scrapbooks, right? Okay, so that would be a primary resource. Well, I don't have that, so what I worked is she lent me some things for the display, which is wonderful. But, you know, I only work with what I have here. But honestly, I don't know how many of you have been to garage sales where you see this stuff, the family just puts them out there. It's like when the pictures and, oh my goodness, they should want this, like that piece says, it's totally probably about today. It's got a story, it's got history, it's about people, and those things were very valuable to somebody one day, once upon a time. So it's part of, like I said, it's part of our legacy. And I would love to have more information. If you guys have information, send it to me. I get letters and notes and things from people all the time, and we put it in the archive. So it goes from you to the archive, and maybe you'll research some of it. So, and I know the Reporter News has a lot of information. I think there's a gap, about 10 years, where there's, right? So you can go in their archive and you can look at all kinds of information, talking to people's names, and things will come up. So anyway, that's, I think they have a lot of questions here. Anybody else have a question? Oh, you know where I am if you think of one.
Thank you.